Hi guys, welcome back to part 2 of the tutorial. So this part of the tutorial, the first part we covered all of the header elements, the hero elements, and this part of the tutorial we'll start fleshing out the actual content of the page. We'll start with the about section, we'll go through there, we'll get that fully responsive, fully working, and we kind of got rid of all the boring stuff, all the documents set up now, so we can just get started with the main build. So stay tuned and we'll jump straight into the code. Before we get started with this video, I'd like to take the opportunity to quickly plug the platform that I've created, Luupro. Luupro is a platform for you to get social about the projects you're working on. You can create new projects and share regular updates during project progression, as well as follow your favourite creators and view a feed of their updates. Unlike other portfolio platforms, Luupro is about sharing the entire journey of a project, from concept to completion, not just the final product at the end. Luupro is the perfect place for you guys to get social about the projects you're working on, and it's entirely free to use, and you can get started at luupro.com. Hi guys, welcome back to the second part of the tutorial. So in the first part of the tutorial we finished off the header and the hero section here, and on this part of the tutorial we need to move on to the inner content of the portfolio. So this is the final product here, this is the final code view. So what we're going to do in this one, we're going to move on to the about me section, go through the layout on that, sort everything for that. And then we'll probably move on to the portfolio section, and we'll split it up to however many videos we'll need. We'll try and not make them too long, so we'll see how we get along, and we'll probably stop when we get into longer territory. So for now, we'll just get coding. We'll start working on the inner sections, and we'll see how far we get. So let's turn back to the code. Okay, so as I said, we finished the header section and the nav elements. So now we're going to move on to the about section. So for the about section, we're going to make a new section down here. We're going to give it a class of nav section this time. And then we're going to give it also an ID of about. So as I said with Emmet last time, you can add the tag you want. You can add a dot for a class name and a hashtag for to add an ID to the element. You can combine these two, so you can add a class and an element at the same time. So if we just click tab, it will expand that view and it will add the class and the ID for us. And then inside the about section, we're going to have a container. Container element basically brings in all of our content into. Gives some boundaries to our content, so it's not always covering the whole width of the page. And probably as you kind of carry on with code tutorials and you carry on learning with code, you'll end up seeing this a few times, and you'll probably use them in pretty much every website you code from the future. So what we'll do is we'll make our own container. We'll go through that in a second, and I'll show you kind of what it does. So inside that container, we want an element with a section header, a div with the class section header, and we're going to have a H3 element with the class of heading. And we're going to call that about. We're going to put about me in there, and then a H4 element with a subheading, and then we're going to make we're going to type in get to know me, so it's kind of a tagline underneath. So at the moment, as you can see, the elements at the moment there's no padding around our section. We need to add some padding, and we also need to add a container to kind of bring these elements into the center a bit more, so they're not just always up against the boundaries of the width. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into the styles. And then from there, we're going to go to up to our global styles area. So in our global styles, we'll start at the bottom. What we're going to do is we're going to start fleshing out our container and start writing the code for our container. So with our container, we want a width of 100%. We want a padding right of 15 pixels. If I could spell padding right. Struggling to type at the moment. Padding left of 15 pixels. And then we want a margin right of auto and a margin left of auto. And what this will do, it will ensure that basically the container is always in the center. So it's not kind of either to the left or to the right. It's always centered with a margin right and margin left of auto. And then what we need to do is we need to add some media queries to our container to basically tell it to take up certain widths depending on the screen size. So at the moment it's still pretty much pushed up all the way to the far right. We don't really want that. So we're going to do, again, like we said last time, we code our styles. We're going to code our styles with a mobile first ethos. So we're going to start with the lowest media queries up to the highest. So when we're on when we're on an element with when we're on a device with a screen of minimum width 568 pixels, we're going to add a max width to our container of 540 pixels. So you can see there it kind of brought it in a bit more. It's given us some more structure. The stuff like the min width of 568 pixels, again, these are kind of industry standards, I'd say, for media queries. You'll see them a lot in projects. 568 kind of stands for small, kind of represents our small elements, our small devices. And then we're going to go up to min width 768, which is the width of most tablets. So on that container, this screen width, sorry, we're going to add a max width to the container of 720 pixels. And then for the next one, we're going to do 992 pixels. So this is kind of moving into larger devices, maybe landscape tablets or something like that. We're going to add a max width of 960 pixels. Oh, I've typed in max width twice. 960 pixels for a min width of 992 pixels. For the next media query, we're going to do 1200 pixels, and this is going to be our final media query. So that's just kind of going into laptop territory, or more into desktop sizes, and kind of larger screens like that. So we're going to add a max width of, let's have a look, what are we going with here? We're going to add a max width of 1170 to our container there. So if we resize this, we can now see kind of what our container does. So at small sizes, it's just kind of got that 15 pixels. Then it hits some larger sizes, and you can start seeing the container jump around. So it gives it some proper formatting, some proper structure to stick to. So it's not kind of like always sticking to the max width of our devices. So what we're then going to do is scroll down to the bottom. We're going to make a new tag for about section called about section to house all of our about styling. And then for the nav section about, we're going to add a padding of 100 pixels to begin with, like that, so that we've got some nice spacing around the area. It's not too tight to the hero element. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back now to global styles. Where are we going? Somewhere underneath the container. And what we're going to do is we're going to do some styles for the section headers, because the section headers, they appear, we're going to use them for every section basically. So we're going to put it as a global style because they're going to be elements that are reused regularly. So for each section header, we want a margin bottom of 50 pixels. We're going to then target the heading element, and we're going to give that a font size of 2.5 rem for smaller devices. We're going to add some larger sizes in our media queries in a minute. So for the subheading, we're going to add a font size of 1 rem when we're on small devices. So as we said last time, just a reminder that 1 rem is equivalent to 16 pixels on most browsers, and then we kind of make it relative for the other sizes we go up. So we're going to add a color of, we're going to use our primary variable, so the nice pink color, and then we are going to change the font weight. We're going to make this a regular font weight, so we're going to use our F regular variable that we set up as well, so that kind of adds a bit of difference. It kind of splits up the main heading here, so a bold heading and then a normal subheading with a nice color on it. So this looks great for smaller sizes. For small screen sizes, that looks great, but the bigger the screen size, kind of, we need to increase that, I think, a bit, increase the font sizes on that just a bit. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into the media query for, let's say, 768 pixels. So from this kind of point onwards, we want to increase the heading size to a font size of 3 rem. Here we are, so just that bit bigger. Just a subtle change, but it makes all the difference. And a subheading size of, let's go 1.5 rem for that. So that's our sections kind of set up. We can use that now. This section header for every section. We don't have to retype the styling in there. So now we can kind of move on to the about section. We can move on to the markup for that, the HTML markup for that, and let's flesh that out now. So let's make this smaller so we can see more of the screen. So we're going to make a new div with a class about content. And then inside there, we're going to have another div with an image wrapper, which is going to house our kind of avatar, our thumbnail image, whatever you want to call it. And I provided you with the image, a stock photo of a person in the images below. So again, if you still haven't got these images, you can download these from the GitHub starter template, and you'll have access to all of these images. You want to add an alt tag to this, so I'm going to just add picture of me to the alt tag. So an alt tag is basically there for when images aren't necessarily displayed. So there's examples where there's like screen readers. Screen readers would then read out the alt tag, and it's just good practice for search engine optimization for SEO. All images should have alt tags, and basically the alt tag is there to describe what is happening in the image or what is in the image. So it's a picture of me. So I've just noticed a problem here. I didn't actually include it into the container. So as you can see, because it's not in the container element, it's now kind of pushed up all the way to the left. So I need to bring the closing div of the container here. I'm going to cut that out, and I'm going to paste it below there. And as you saw there, but if you're wondering, if I reformat my text wrong and click save, it will automatically format it properly. And that's an extension called Prettier. You can download that from the VSCode extensions here. So if I type in Prettier, you can basically set this up to format on save. So that's what that is, in case you are wondering and want the same functionality. So we've got the image wrapper, so that's going to contain our avatar, as we said. And then we want to make a div with the class of text content, and inside that text content we're going to have another heading which is called the content heading. So this isn't the same as the section heading, it's a content heading. I'm going to put in there, I'm Matt Dobson, a freelance developer from the UK. And then underneath that I'm going to make a p tag, and I'm going to have some filler text with whatever I'm up to. So on VS Code, so whatever, kind of some about me content, but I'm just going to fill it with filler text. So on VS Code, there's a nice function which we can just basically type lorem, and then we can hit tab, and it will fill the content with just filler text, which is perfect for what we need. If we want more text, I can do lorem ×2. I could do an asterisk ×2, and it'll give me a little bit more filler text there to fill it with some filler dummy text for the moment. Then we're going to add a HR tag. So a HR tag is only actually one tag. There's no opening tag and closing tag. So if we do HR tab there and click save, you can see that it's just one tag. It's got the opening and then it immediately closes. That's similar to an image tag. Image tags don't have two an opening and closing tag. They just close themselves at the end of an image there. So HR tag there, and that's going to separate our page, kind of our content here. And then underneath that, we are going to have a div of the class of text content footer. So we're going to add some footer content in here, which is going to be we're going to have a download my CV button. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a div with the class of button wrapper. So we're making a div that will contain our button. And then we're going to make an A element, link element with the class of primary button. And in that, so the hashtag, the href, sorry, is going to just be hashtag for now. You can put a proper download link to your CV. Maybe it's hosted on something like Google Docs or something like that. And then you could put your download link in there. You might even want to make the target blank _ blank to open it in a new tab. And then I'm going to have some text in here that says download my CV. Type like that. Okay, so that's the button wrapper done, and then we also want some social links again. I'm going to have the social links appearing to the right or somewhere down below. So what I'm going to do is, in the last episode, we made the global styling for the social links. So I'm going to copy the global styling for those links. I'm going to scroll down, and I'm going to simply paste it into my text content footer. So you can see there the social links show up with the nice styling. We just have to kind of sort out their positioning for this content here. So let's scroll down and let's add some styling. So we've got all the markup we need now, all the HTML markup we need, and we're going to move on to some styling for the section. So to begin with, we're going to take a mobile first ethos. We're going to design the layout for the mobile first. So what we're going to do is we're going to target the about content. We don't even need the hashtag about because we're only using about content once. we're going to target the image wrapper inside about content, and we're going to add a margin bottom to that image wrapper of 30 pixels just to move the text down from the image. And then we actually want to add some styling to the image. So when we are on a mobile display, we're going to have a round square image that we're going to display. I need to add an image tag in there. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a height of 250 pixels, a width of 250 pixels, and then we're going to have a border radius of 9999 pixels. Basically, that just will allow, that will force the image to have a perfectly round border radius if we just put a high value in there. So as you can see at the moment, if I zoom in a bit, the image is warped. It's not, because of the sizing, it wasn't a square image, it was a rectangular image, so it's appeared warped. So what we can do to fix that is there's an element called object fit. CSS property, sorry, not an element, a CSS property called object fit, and we can set that to cover, which allows us to cover the whole square basically, and it will stop any warping. It keeps the original aspect ratio of the image, which is really nice. Let's reset the zoom in here. Okay, so now we want to focus this heading here. We're going to do some styling for that. So we're going to go into about content, and then we're going to go into the text content element, the wrapper, and then we're going to do the target the content heading. So we're going to go font size of 1.5 rem for that, and then we want a margin bottom of 20 pixels. So that should, yeah, that's separated the text nicely there. Right, okay, so now what do we want to target? We want to target this this p tag here, all our kind of text content. So what we're going to do is we're going to target the about content, text content, and we want to target the p element. So what we're going to do is we're going to put a margin bottom of 16 pixels on this. So this basically means that we can, if we wanted more lines of p tags, so let's go back up to here. So if I wanted another line of, say, lorem ipsum, it gives us some nice separation, see, between our p tags in case you wanted to add a few paragraphs into your about me section. So that margin bottom there allows us to do that. And then we're going to add some more styling. So we're going to give a font size of 1.125 rem, which is about 18 pixels. So just bring that font size up a bit. We're going to do a color of muted. So I like to kind of change my colors around slightly. We want people focusing on the heading element, so I'm going to make the color just use that muted variable we created at the start to make it slightly off-white, just so that the focus is on the heading, and then you can kind of read the text afterwards. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to increase the line height to 1.5. The best thing to do on p tags is for readability is to create a higher line height. You might want to kind of separate out the content there. So yeah, we'll create a nice line height on there so it's easier to read for the users. And then we kind of can leave the styling for the p tags there. We're going to move on to the HR elements. So the HR element stands for horizontal rule. It basically adds a rule across the page, across the whole width of the page. So what we're going to do is we're going to target that. I'm going to go about content.text content HR, and we're going to add a margin of 30 pixels and naught. And as you can see, there's something here happening called margin condensing, I believe it's called. I can't remember the correct technical term at the moment, but basically there's a margin of 16 pixels here, and there's a margin of 30 pixels on the HR. Sorry, a margin of 16 pixels on the bottom of the P element, a margin of 30 pixels on top of the HR element. And because the HR element has a higher margin, what it's done is it absorbed the margin of the P tag rather than kind of combining it. So we haven't got an overall margin of 46 pixels. Instead, they've condensed the margin down and just used the margin from the HR tag. Okay, so right from there, we want to change so on the HR, we want to change that to a nice pink, use our primary color, choose a nice bold color. So we're gonna set the border. The way that the HR gets its color is through borders. So we're going to set the border of 1 pixel solid, and we're going to set it to primary, and that gives it a nice pink, which works with our color scheme nicely. So we can then go to about content and focus on this primary button. But actually what we're going to do is we're not going to do that there. We're going to do it in our global styles, because although we're not using it in this current design, you guys afterwards may want to add further buttons around your page. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the button styling. We're going to make it a global style that can be used across the website whenever. So it doesn't have to be specific to the About section. It can be used anywhere on the site. So what we're going to do is we're going to start working on some styling for this. So we're going to give, to begin with, the font weight a bold font type. So we're going to make it bold. We're going to use our variable f bold, which contains our width, our font weight, which we defined at the start of the first tutorial. We're going to text transform it to uppercase. We want all that text to appear uppercase. And then we are going to make the color of it white. It already is, I know, but we want to enforce that for the hover rules. And then we're going to add a background color of our primary. So that's added the pink background. And then what we're going to do is we're going to add a border radius of that high value again to give it perfectly round corners. But as you can see, that's far too tight, so we need to add some padding. So I'm going to do 15 pixels, 20 pixels, which means we're going to add 15 pixels to the top and bottom, excuse me, and 20 pixels to the left and right. So now we are also going to add a border of 2 pixels solid primary. And this may seem slightly confusing to you. You might be wondering why we're adding this. And the reason we're adding this is because when we hover over the element, what we're going to do is we're going to change the background color to transparent. So the border will remain, and we will basically lose just the background color. So I'll show you what we're going to do in a minute. So we also want to make a text align center on that button as well, so that the text is always centered. So for the primary button, we're going to make a hover effect. So we can type in primary button, we do colon hover and target that. We can do a background color of transparent, as we said. So when we hover, it's going to be transparent. And we're going to do a color of var primary. So this is going to change the color of the text when we hover. So as you can see, the border stays. When we hover, it changes the text to pink and it goes to a transparent background. But like last time, it's like we said in the first episode, it's kind of a bit harsh on the hover effects. We want to add a transition there. So we want to transition all of the changes by 0.3 seconds ease, and that will give us a nice fade in, fade out effect, which looks good there. Excuse me. Right, so let's go to the About content. Oh. About content. Right, so we're all the way at the bottom now. So what we're going to do is we're going to add some kind of positioning styling. So we've got the overall styling for the button. This can be used around the area, but we want to what we want to do is give it some proper styling to work in this layout, work in the About Me section layout. So we're going to target the primary button, and the first thing we're going to do is make it display block. So what this does is, so currently, to begin with, by default, A elements have a display of inline, which means that if we inspect this, you can kind of see that let's make this slightly smaller here. We just kind of want to inspect this here. So at the moment, the button, as you can see, it's kind of got the blue area in the middle that is all that's considered kind of the button. Inline block allows it to be in line with other text, but it means that it's not just, it means that we basically get the whole button being considered rather than just the text. At the moment, the reason these social icons are all the way hugging the button on top of the button is because they're hugging the text. If we add a display block, inline block, it will keep its width, but it will mean that the buttons now hug the full size of the button, which is brilliant. But what we also want is we want kind of a full width button on the mobile devices. So we're on a mobile device, we want a nice wide button. So we're going to put it as display block. And that display block, basically, blocks will cover the whole width by default. So it gives us a nice wide button. And then we want a margin bottom of 20 pixels. So now we can move on from the primary button. When we are in the mobile view, we want to basically move the social icons so they're aligned center, because the current alignment doesn't look quite right next to the center aligned button. So on mobile views, like we said, we do a mobile first ethos, so we can code our mobile views in here. Then we add other CSS styles to our media queries. So now on mobile devices or smaller devices, we're going to have a text align of center. So that kind of sums up the design for the, I think for the mobile view. I'm quite happy with that for the mobile view. It's nice, separated, gets the information across nicely. What I am going to do is I'm just going to scroll up, and where we added the height 5,000 pixels as kind of like a mock-up in the first episode, I'm going to remove that now because we have got more elements on the page. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start doing the code for we're going to start coding up the kind of larger displays. What we want the about section to look like on a desktop, basically. So we're going to make a media query, and inside that media query, we're going to start with a min width of 568 pixels. And the first thing I want to do at lower screen sizes is get this button and these social icons next to each other in a nice layout first, and then we'll kind of deal with the images and this text at higher media queries. So we're going to do about content, text content footer, and what we're going to do at this 568 width, we want this to display in flex, so that both the children elements, as we said with flexbox, the parent, if you add display of flex to the parent, the children elements will appear next to the child elements will appear next to each other, and then like usual, align items center vertically aligns those items. If we spell align right, spell items center vertically aligns those items, and the justify content, and we're going to put space between. And then that will align the contents, align them nicely at the edges of the border. But as you can see at the moment, if we remove that, you can see that it's not actually center aligned properly. That's because we still have that margin bottom of 20 pixels on the primary button that we used from earlier. So what we want to do is we want the primary button to have a margin bottom of 0 pixels at this point, this size. So as you saw, the 20 pixels, when we remove the margin bottom, they're now nicely aligned. We can have the justified content back in there of space between, and we have a nice layout there. So that's kind of starts to look nicer as we start to bring the sizes up. So the next media queries I think we want to do is at a larger screen size of, let's say, 768 pixels. I think what we want to do is add some more padding to this section. So at the moment, the about section has a padding of 100 pixels, top and bottom. Instead, we want a padding of 150 pixels top and bottom, and we want naught left and right when we're on a larger screen size. So if we go to a larger screen size, you saw the padding there increased because we've got more space to work with now. And then I think we're gonna move on to a media query for larger screen sizes, min width 992 pixels, because if we put this image and this text next to each other now, the text is just going to be really stretched and really long. It's just too long for now. So what we're going to do is we'll do that in a media query first, min width 992 pixels, and we're going to start putting this side by side layout now. So what we're going to do is I'm going to stretch this up. So we can start seeing what it's going to look like on a desktop size. So at 992 pixels, we want the about content to have a display of flex, and we want to align these items center. So straight away, so this basically means that the image is brought down into the center rather than them both being aligned at the top. So now they're side by side on smaller screen sizes. And then we're going to type the text content, and what we're going to do is we're going to give it a position of relative, and we're going to give the width 100%. Then we're going to give it some flex properties. So you can give flex children flex properties. We're going to do 0, 60%. So what this basically does is gives it a flex basis of 0, and it's going to give it a flex width of 60%. And then we also add a max width of 60% there for fallbacks as well. So this element here is never going to exceed 60% of the parent container, which is perfect. So we kind of want to reflect this on the image wrapper as well. We're going to reflect similar on there. So we're going to put a position of relative, a width of 100%, and we're going to add a flex of 40%. And then a max width of 40% as well. So this image wrapper is now taking up 40% of the other half of the area. It just doesn't appear like that because our image has got a max width of, if we remember, we set a height and a width of 250 pixels. So we need to remove that to kind of see what's going on there. So what we're going to do is we're going to type the image, about content, image wrapper, image. We've got a border radius. We're going to take away the border radius now. So 0. We're going to take away the width. So the width is now going to take up 100% of its container. We want to take away the height as well, and put a height of auto. So that basically puts it back to its original. It'll put it back to the relevant height for a width of 100%. But if we look at this, we can kind of see that we need some margin. We've got too much spacing here. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a padding right on the image wrapper of 70 pixels. And that will kind of give us some nice spacing between our text and our image. And I'm also going to bring up the font size for the heading. Here we want this to be slightly larger. Now we're on a bigger screen size. So about content, text content, content heading. We're going to add a font size of 2 rem, and we're going to increase the margin bottom to 30 pixels. Yeah, so that's a lot cleaner. That's a nicer section here, excuse me. So if we make the screen size larger, so on desktops, this is now a really nice layout we've got here. Works really nicely. And yeah, displays the content in an interesting layout, a nice layout in there. So let's kind of go back to if we have a look at our project so far on the full screen version here. Let's go back, let's close them. So yeah, if we go back to main screen here, we have a nice about section if we look at it from a kind of desktop size. If we click the about tag, it will take us down to this section nicely. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add a bit of extra padding to the about section. So if I change screen again. So I'm going to change this from 150 pixels to 170 pixels so we can demonstrate what the JavaScript's doing when we're in relevant sections. So if I go back to the large version of our code, if we go to click the about section, you can see as we scroll past the hero and we're in the about section, the active class that we added to our nav link now makes this pink, makes it show up pink, so we're in the about section. That's added through JavaScript. And if we click the about section, it scrolls us nicely to the section as well. So if I quickly open up the JavaScript, I can kind of give a quick demonstration as to what that's doing. And that's happening at this bottom section here. Basically, we've added a scroll listener to our document. It's checking for the Windows scroll height, and if it's for each nav section, if it's in that section, it's adding the nav link of active to the relevant section that we're in. So you can take a proper look around there, try and work it out, and have a play around if you want to work out how that's working. But this is basically this section of content here on the in the JavaScript. Okay, so. That pretty much sums up our about section. I think we can start moving. I think what we'll do actually is we'll stop the recording there. So we finish our first section, and the portfolio section is slightly larger bit on this one on the next episode. Because if we go here and we click on if we go to our final product, this is our final product, we're going to introduce stuff like modals. We've done the JavaScript for the modals for you, but we've still got to do some styling for those modals kind of to create the modal section. So yeah, this is going to be a slightly bigger section in the next tutorial, slightly more complex, but it's going to be an interesting kind of area to work on with you guys. So thanks for watching, and if you've got any, as usual, if you need any help, just write something down in the comments below, and either someone in the comments or I'll be able to respond to your questions for you. Okay, thank you for watching.